Listen, once again, there's no such thing as a height or mass advantage. It doesn't exist. Size and height advantage is something that's largely overstated in sports and athletic competitions because most people are dumb and most people never actually played sports, so they simply just watch. And from watching, you will make general assumptions that are not necessarily correct because if you're not actually experiencing the sport, you can't really have an idea what's going on. So I'm going to explain to you why size and mass is actually a disadvantage in the reality of combat or sports. So let's take, for example, if we had a fight between Demetrius Johnson and Francis Ngannou. Now, most of you guys will say Francis Ngannou will overwhelm Mighty Mouse and beat the fuck out of him and there'll be no hope. I say that's tomfoolery. I actually say Mighty Mouse would actually smoke Francis if the competition was truly fair. So let's say hypothetically, if we had a football field-sized stadium and we had unlimited time, no breaks, no water, the fight goes as long until somebody gives up. In that particular circumstances, Mighty Mouse would actually smoke Francis. And to be honest with you, not even a trained fighter. You can go get an endurance runner. He would smoke Francis. Any person that's smaller than Francis would absolutely lose to Francis in an open field, unlimited time contest. You might be asking, well, why? Well, it's simply the matter of physics. So if you imagine the physics of the game, what makes humans such a adaptable and great creature is our ability for endurance. And because that we are relatively small to most of the animals and prey that we hunt, we have the ability to be able to outlast them in a race of endurance. And the thing about time and space, when time and space is unlimited and you remove the artificial confines of a ring and round systems, smallness is king. Because what would happen is, in this hypothetical situation, all Mighty Mouse would have to do is simply just wait out Francis Ngannou. And since Francis Ngannou is too big and not fast enough or not nimble enough to catch Mighty Mouse, all that would happen is Francis would eventually tire out just through metabolic respiration. Eventually, his muscles would start to cramp. He would be basically depleted at full stand-up due to caloric intake not being large enough or not gaining enough calories to be able to actually maintain his homeostasis. So naturally, his stamina will just die off and zap quickly. That's why heavyweight fights are typically a slugfest and they get very boring after about the second round because most guys don't have the endurance to fight for 30 rounds with no break. Or 30 rounds, but they'll fight for 5 rounds at 5-minute clips. Heavyweight boxing, usually it's a slugfest and it gets really ugly at the end of it. Mighty Mouse, on the other hand, is a much smaller creature, much smaller animal. Thus, his metabolic pathways or his metabolic rest rate is much significantly lower than Francis Ngannou. And because his metabolic pathways are much slower and his metabolism is much slower, what would happen is he would simply have to just walk around and wait till Francis is tired out. And as soon as Francis tried to chase him or expend energy, he would slowly start to be chipped away. Now, it might take a day, it might take 2 days, but as long as Mighty Mouse is able to avoid Francis, Francis will eventually just pass out due to exhaustion and lack of stamina and lack of breathing and lack of water. On the other hand, Mighty Mouse will still be up and going because, once again, he's smaller. Smaller organisms have a lower metabolism rate as opposed to bigger ones. That's why bigger organisms need to eat more food and take in more water in order to maintain their metabolic pathways to be able to keep going. If not, they fall victim to basic exhaustion, which is why humans hunted for a large amount of years until we got projectile weaponries, where we simply just stalk a prey and walk them down until they eventually get killed. And I say that to say, height does not help you in athletic sports. There's only 5 components of sports that make you an athlete. Speed and quickness, or speed and agility, endurance, strength, hand-eye coordination, pattern recognition. If you have eliteness in all 5 of those, you'll be good at any sport you take on and play, regardless of your limb size. And then some people might say, well, what about basketball? Well, let's take basketball, for example. Basketball has an artificial mechanism known as a rim that sits at 10 feet tall. Because of the trajectory of the rim, height does play a larger factor. Now, the height doesn't necessarily play a large factor in you being better at basketball, but it allows you to be able to shoot better angles and spend less energy when it comes to actually shooting a basketball or playing along the field and getting rebounds. But that's not to say, how do guys compete that are smaller? Like, how's the Muggsy Bogues and Nate Robinson, Allen Iverson, how are these smaller guys, how are they able to compete against giants? Well, the secret is they are extremely elite in the 5 categories that I stated: strength, agility and quickness, endurance, hand-eye coordination, pattern recognition. Because of those 5, they are so good that the limbs and the other sides, they can overcome the obstacle of the height disadvantage. And then if you look at the other end, you would imagine, why are not all the 7 feet tall guys good at basketball? Most of them really suck pretty badly, aka the Kwame Browns of the league. And so if you were to take the top 100 players in the NBA and do like a bell curve to actually see like their size, you would find the elite basketball players within the NBA or the top 100 typically lie between the height of 6'3" to about 6'5", 6'6" maybe at the maximum. And why is that? Because that is the perfect balance between athleticism and size. Being taller is not necessarily an advantage. Being taller just means you're taller. All it means is you have limb extensions. But if you don't possess the first 5, if you don't possess the 5 elite talents that require you to be the athlete, your size advantage is essentially fucking useless. It does nothing for you. And so I say this to say, listen, people, stop taking height and taking it so seriously. It means nothing. It means nothing. It's just some bullshit that we made up to make guys. Well, it's a thing that tall guys did to demean their brothers to get pussy. That's essentially what all it comes down to. So listen, young people, build up your endurance, build up your strength, build up your speed and quickness, build your pattern recognition, build up your hand-eye coordination, and you'll excel at anything you choose to do.